Okay, so this is the build of my insulated Long Hive. It's something I've been mulling over for quite some time now, and I finally got it done. I have a number of insulated poly hives, and they do extremely well at the moment. But sometimes they're a pain to lift, and I also wanted the consistency of one frame size. I think there's big advantages in one frame size rather than having to work with ideals. With the one frame size I can move them into the brood box and similar. So this is the hive here. It's insulated on top. It has an insulated roof. So I have the hive open now. Just like to talk about some of the features of the hive. So basically the core of the hive, and I think it's obvious, but I don't know whether it is. I've grabbed the poly hives that you see here, I've chopped them up, and I've put them in the inside. So we're looking at some incredibly thick, it's basically the size of a poly hive. Essentially it's that size plus 12 millimeters thickness, or that end plus 12 millimeters thickness. So really good insulation on the hive, and then with the integration of these covers, which will go on, even the covers have kind of got these little ridges, so they increase insulation or ventilation, or I don't know what you'd call it, going up. But yeah, basically that classic poly hive design using the Paradise Poly, or these days the Hive IQ design, concentrating on insulation at the top and ventilation at the bottom. So one of the things you've definitely learned over the years is that if you have poor insulation at the top, the bees are in a cluster, the heat rises, hits the cooler top of the hive, condenses, and then I've opened up some hives in spring with some mold and really wet, and it's never really good for the bees. So the design of this gives me the Long Hive design, and that design means it's accessible for Steph and Alex, myself. It reduces my lifting. I don't have to put boxes somewhere else. I've got the underneath storage, easy to work on, easy to inspect, while still giving me all the advantages of the poly hives that I have. It's an experiment. Going to try it for a year or two, see how I go, and then consider building further hives. So I think basically these are my follower boards. The follower boards, I experimented around with it, but I found that a good heavy follower board worked best. I did try some follower boards that were pure foam. I've got a little bit of an idea. One of my big problems is that I did throw on this second box here. I've put some frames in there. I don't know whether they're going to fill that with honey before winter. I doubt they will. So what I might have to do is give the bees some ideal frames with honey over winter. So at the moment I've worked out what I can actually do is, if I move the follower board to the other end, I can flip these over, push them down, and I end up with, I can probably fit a small super, or a small super's worth of ideal hives. That won't be a long-term solution. The idea is to go full-size frames all the way through the hive, and in that way it just gives me the flexibility of moving frames around. You know, frames can go from a honey to the brood, and then eventually once it's in the brood it can be then retired. So if I move these out of the way, okay, basically show the ventilation at the bottom. You can see the ventilation at the bottom down there. One of the things here is trays. So I have these grower or trap trays I can fill with oil. So they're a standard size tray designed for another style of beehive. They slide in. They still provide ventilation at the bottom of the hive. They provide ventilation, they don't actually totally block things off. They work really, really well. Yeah, so there's one. I think the only thing there is that they don't go right to the ends. Initially, I was going to put an entrance in the middle. So I'm not going to put the entrance in the middle after some research. I've got them at either end. Either end will not only direct the bees into that area, it'll allow me to use the other end for possibly like a little nuke or something like that. And the queen can work in that area. In future, I may even try and fit in another tray. But apart from that, yeah, insulation on the sides, 19mm marine ply on the bottom. The frame, the metal frame that I used, I could go off and build a custom frame. I could have built a wooden frame. This suits me. I've got storage underneath. Hopefully it'll work well. I've got the roof, which is insulated. Again, just put some of those blue foam panels. Won't be fantastic insulation, but it may provide a little bit of protection on the other really hot days. Keep the bees a little bit cooler in the same way it might with your house. I've got these little bee escapes here, hopefully beetle proof to stop beetles getting back in. Hopefully they'll work their way out. It's going to be I'll see, something tells me I need to drill that hole a little bit bigger, but I'll see how I go. Hopefully they'll sort of detect air or light coming through there and work their way out. Yeah. I'll hopefully try and brush as many bees off as possible once I put these on. So yeah, magnets on the sides for putting your hive tool. I've got the 4 little catches, seem to work well. Yeah, I think that covers most of the features. I think around the front, that's the Guardian beetle entrance, or beetle guard entrance. I don't know what they call it. It's supposed to stop hive beetles getting into your hive. That's my design for a little bit of a... I don't know how to block that off, so I'll probably end up painting that yellow at some stage. Just to restrict them from there. If I need to at some stage, I can open it up. So yeah, that's the design. And okay, so I'm just going to talk about what worked well. So I really liked it's an 18mm marine ply baseboard. Really liked that, would work with that again. The way you screw up into it was the right way. It didn't warp on me. I just really liked it. I like these surrounds. The 40mm, the top coming down onto it didn't have to do perfect alignment, although I'm pretty close. But it gives a reasonable seal around the top without having to be perfect. One of the big things on this build is that I built it without a woodworking workshop. This was just all built in the backyard or the garage area with standard everyday tools, not with some super duper milling workshop. So that was a core part of it. And yeah, so I may put some sort of rubber sides around it or something like that, but for now that seems to be working really well. Obviously I like the inner boards. This worked extremely well, putting the actual Paradise polyhives into this box worked really well. It's all lined up, it's come out as planned. That wasn't a drama at all. I really liked the stand. Like this stand, I've got the actual storage underneath, and look, the core of this, I can raise it to the height I want. The core of this, or part of it, was not only for me, it's so Steph and Alex can get in here and work on the beehive if they like, without having to lift heavy boxes. Yeah, that's basically the stuff. You know, I think one thing, the attachment of the bottom to the sides worked really well. I had several ways I could have done that, but screwing in from the top worked really well, so I was happy with that. These connection pieces, I've got magnets for holding bits, the chains, the insulation in the roof. To a certain extent, the design of the roof, that's sort of like bent ply, seemed to work really well. although I might do things different next time. But yeah, overall, lots of things I was super happy with. Okay, just talk about what I would do differently. I think the first thing, the major change that I would do differently is I would try and use 19mm pine instead of the 12mm ply around the outside. So I used some 12mm ply, and that was an absolute punish to work with. It bent on me. It was a little bit difficult to screw in there. It's only 12mm to work with, and then you're screwing on the end piece of ply. And I did have times it was sitting around, it started to split in certain areas on the top, and I had to glue it together and seal it really quick. So that caused me all sorts of dramas. I'd like to use pine. The problem with pine is it only comes in 280mm. And as I was saying, this was all built with standard tools. So I don't have, a woodworking workshop. It's all just really standard stuff. So I can get a 280mm ply plank. I really need that 300mm to give the, when I look at the size of the frames and to bring up here, these sides are about 300mm. I bought the edge up here a little bit for consistency around here, but with the base, but in general 280 would be a problem. It would probably come up to here and would be halfway up the insulation. So yeah, I've got some ideas, but I can either get a wider pine, or potentially I can get, I've got some ideas that I might be able to work with, possibly changing the edges, and I'll think about that next time, but that's one of the things I would change. What I would do next time, big thing I would change, is not put on these bottom pieces before I connected the box. That was a mistake. I ended up having to put these side, you probably can't see it, but there's these like side connectors. I couldn't get any screws along the bottom there or along the sides. It'll work for this case. The box is generally sitting on the base. It's pretty well connected. So, but I think I would put those base supports afterwards. I'd also try on the base supports, one of the things I'll probably do different is maybe put in an extra tray and ventilation, have the ventilation and those things going further to the actual ends. This time, one of the things that I was looking at where I initially built it was a front entrance. So I was just going to have a single front entrance, or having that as the main entrance, and of course the ventilation then will be over the brood boxes, and any ventilation over the brood area, and any lack of ventilation will be right on the ends, which probably doesn't matter, it's just honey super areas. So, but on another design, having the two side entrances, maybe, I think I could probably fit in another tray, probably take out one of the supports. I think the 90mm ply would handle it without a problem. What else would I do different? Build it in winter. I built this in summer and it took me a hell of a lot longer than I thought. A lot of the time was waiting for paint to dry, but it still took me a very long time. Lots of slow design decisions, and it was really done on the fly. So I think it's definitely a winter job. I would probably change the design of the roof. So at the moment we've got that curved roof, and I've been looking at some other designs, and I don't know whether I'd do that again. I ended up using two thinner sheets and they were put together. I glued them extensively, but there was still little gaps no matter what I did, and I had to spend a whole bunch of time sealing those. One little thing, maybe I'd put a groove along the back of the hinge there. I realised that the hinge, when it went in, although it looks like it's flat, it's just thrown it forward a few millimetres. You don't really notice it. It doesn't matter with the 42mm sides, which are quite forgiving. And if there was a way to have a removable roof, that might be tempting as well, simply because it does come up very heavy. So Alex and I moved in the place this afternoon, and yeah, it just took a lot of work and it was awkward with the roof. So I think that pretty well covers everything. That's the insulated poly hive build. all done, and all I have to do is get bees into it, and that will probably be in the next day or so. Get some bees in it. I want to clean it up more, make sure I finished everything, and yeah, see how we go with the bees. See ya. And now we have bees. There seems to be a reasonable amount of bees which have worked out how to come in and out. And there is tons of bees in the hive when I move them across, although there seems to be a lot of bees also in the older hive mulling around. I'll just let the worker bees go in and move them across when I'm ready.